I think a lot of you have perhaps seen some of my literature, maybe my Facebook page, whatever. You may not know what my background is. I came here many, many years ago. I was a waitress at Gabriella Cafe in my 20s, and I had graduated from Northwestern University and the Medill School of Journalism. I became a journalist here, and I got to know the town really quickly, very well that way, which was awesome. And here we go with the. And I went on to continue in journalism, went over to San Jose, worked for the Metro in San Jose, and did a lot of investigative reporting. I won several awards statewide for investigative and environmental journalism. I think that's a skill that I bring to both the campaign and to the office, because I'm good at sorting through all kinds of wonky information and looking for the places where things don't add up, and sharing that with the public in a way that is very simple and common sense so that people can understand what's happening. I'm a communicator. I communicate with the public because I believe the public should know what's going on. You know, sometimes I may not even have a decision formed in my head, but I want you to know what the issues are, what we're dealing with. And that's how I see it. If you look at my social media, you'll see I'm already trying to educate the community about the housing emergency that we're in, about the homelessness situation, because I have years of experience working in homelessness, and I'm going to get more into that. As a journalist, I would often be outing like the bad guy or the bad gal or the bad person, and I started to feel like I would out one bad person and then the next person was right behind them to come along and do more bad things. And I started to feel like the issues we were facing were really psychological. And spiritual, really, that people don't understand how to just sort of be happy with enough. You know, there's this tendency to want to look for more power, more money, more influence, more status, more position. And I think that's what's really getting us into trouble. So I got into psychology. I got into an innate resiliency psychology. I left journalism, and I started working for Santa Cruz County Department of Alcohol and Drug Services. For about 7 years, I worked for the Department of Alcohol and Drug Services under Bob Garner, who's a visionary leader of that department. And I did innate resiliency trainings throughout the county system. So I worked in the jails. I worked in the main jail downtown in Santa Clara. I worked in the Milpitas jail, Elmwood. I worked in juvenile hall. I worked in the correctional ranches. I worked in the work furlough programs. And I also worked with correctional officers. And I worked with mental health professionals, because all the county employees could come through our trainings on a quarterly basis, as well as the general public. And I really saw how much appreciating our states of mind and understanding when we're in a very negative, low mood is different from like acting from that low mood, just understanding, you know, when we're in judgment and reaction. And so that work was so incredible to me. I co-founded a nonprofit called the Center for Sustainable Change. This is a national nonprofit. I did all the initial fundraising, continued to do the fundraising, had a staff of about 5 in our office, and we did work across the country with the Kellogg Foundation, with the San Francisco Foundation, with United Way, with county health agencies, with the San Francisco Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. And we worked with populations of all kinds across the country. So in the Mississippi Delta, you know, one of the poorest regions of our nation, talking about mindset, you know, talking about how when we don't believe that we can do things, we don't do things. But that can change. And also working with police and residents together, dialoguing together about crime in a neighborhood. And dialogue is one of my listening and dialogue are two of my most important values, because we have lots of different political perspectives, probably here this afternoon, and I believe everyone holds a kernel of truth in terms of looking at a problem. And one person actually can't hold the whole truth, because a situation in the county, for example, is going to involve lots of different perspectives and people who've been working on different parts of the problem and seeing it in their own ways. So my process is to really listen for a long time. I sometimes say I'm like Columbo. I can look a little dumb because I'll be like, What's going on? And I'll take a lot of notes. I don't like to jump into, I know the answer. Because often I don't, and I don't like to say that I do until I feel comfortable with, you know what, I feel like we can move forward this way. In 2016, I became an activist, and you may know why. So I was helping to organize marches and protests, and I organized a tax day march in Palo Alto with Anna Eshoo and my friend Hal Plotkin, who served in the Obama administration. And we were doing a tax day rally and march to get Trump to release his tax returns. And I was doing climate stuff. I was doing democracy stuff. I was doing all kinds of stuff. And you should know this about me. This is who I am. I risked my private practice. I was in private practice at the time after working at the nonprofit for about 10 years. And I had all kinds of clients. And I just decided I just need to do this because it's what's important. And I'm very grateful that I have the privilege of being able to drop things and not be too concerned about money. And not everyone has that privilege. But that's what I did. I knew that I would risk my reputation and my career. And I did. Because I'm always interested in what is the right thing for me to do for the public, for the environment, for the planet, for the species. So finally, after, 3 years of chaos, maybe it was just 2 years, you guys remember it, probably, I decided, Amy, you're just going in so many different directions, you need to focus. So I decided to focus on climate, and I got involved with Citizens Climate Lobby here. Linda Marin, amazing woman, she's on my team, advocating for a carbon tax at the congressional level. With dividends back into Americans' pockets so that they don't freak out about having to pay higher prices for gas and other things. And so I flew to D.C., I lobbied there, I lobbied Jimmy Panetta there, I lobbied various senators there. And then I also was getting information. I got a paper from a friend called Deep Adaptation. And when I got that paper by this professor of sustainability in England, Jem Bendell, it was 35 pages, and I read the whole thing, and I remember being mad at my friend. It was about climate, and it was about the reality. Like, let's soberly look at the reality of our situation. And I remember this anger. I was like, why did he send me this? I am so upset. Like, I was kind of happy, before I read this. And it was just about how, the IPCC reports weren't including these tipping points and accelerating changes that we're facing that really we have no handle on whatsoever. And it was like, we really need to look at what's going to happen when we see some forms of collapse, whether it's freshwater systems, food systems, transportation. We're already seeing that. It's part of supply chain disruption. Like when there's flooding all over a city, of course there are probably factories and all businesses there that we're not producing anything now. So we're already in the midst of that. And so I became a climate activist. I helped to co-found Extinction Rebellion here. And we did activism. We helped to organize the 2019 Youth Climate Strikes, working with a broad coalition of groups. Very different ideologically, but we put together that huge strike, and then continued to do activism. Was doing a lot of activism around getting out the vote for 2020. Those of you who know me, I'm just nonstop this way. Like, I'm so concerned, and I just want to do everything I can. And what else is important? The other thing is I've done a lot of work with people who are homeless. I have worked, of course, in all these different settings where people are either homeless because they are foster youth, or they're in a group home, or whatever it is that's happening, or they're in jail and they were homeless before they got there, or directly with, staff. I trained staff at one of the largest homeless shelters in San Francisco in China Basin. And I also did a drop-in class for about 1.5 years at MHCAN, a Mental Health Client Action Network. You may not know about it. It is a peer-run facility in Midtown where people can come in and chill out and watch TV and use the restroom and take classes. So I did a volunteer-based class there, teaching people about these principles of mental health that I've been teaching for years. And what else do you need to know about me? I'm a mom. I have 2 teenagers. I love to dance. I love music. I really love human beings. And even if they're politically a different color, stripe than I am, I can get past the intellectual piece and just connect at the heart level. And even, and I promise to do that in office, to really listen to people no matter where they're coming from. We may not agree. We may walk away disagreeing, but people will feel from me that I was touched by them. And maybe that'll influence my decision making too. I would hope to always be influenced. So policy, I really want to make Santa Cruz County a climate-forward, bold, and innovative county. I was asked to run for this office, and I said, I don't know, I feel like nationally we have to do stuff, and we need the Democrats to blah, 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 and they were like, well, you could actually do things here. And I thought about it for about a month, and then I thought, we could do things here. There's more power here on the board than I can have at the national level. And if all these counties were doing things, and if we were doing wonderful things, then other counties would emulate the things that we are doing. And to be honest, I feel like this county and the city are a little behind in terms of what some people call progressive ideas. I sometimes call them best practices. Like, what is the most effective thing we can do? One of them is, it's very exciting, regenerative agriculture. If you haven't seen the film Kiss the Ground, it's about how much a certain kind of no-till farming could draw carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and into the soil in huge amounts. And why aren't we doing that here? We need to do that here. We have so much agriculture. We need to have a youth climate course so that our youth, who are stressed out, in anxiety and sometimes despair. I can't tell you how many youth, I just worked up at the university as a course assistant for a quarter, and half the time they were asking me, how do we deal with all of this emotionally? Tell us. And luckily, I could share that with them too. And I'm happy to answer questions about what I share about that with people. But one of the things that we have to do is our very best. And if we're not doing our very best, it feels bad. It feels bad to me. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. I want to be the one who's like, let's do these really great things that other people are doing across the country. In fact, Adam's part of Committee for Organic and Regenerative Agriculture. Already we've got people organizing. I've already talked to people on the Board of Supervisors. I've already connected them with agencies that are working on regenerative agriculture up at Chico, Regenerative Agriculture Program. If you look at my YouTube channels, you see what I talk about and how I try to promote these ideas. Housing is an emergency situation. I hope everyone knows that. We are losing workers. We are losing teachers. We are losing social service professionals. Housing matters. Can't even hire people to help take care of people who are homeless because the people who are working for them can't find homes. And that's where we're at. And we can either decide that we don't want all these people who don't make, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to live here, or we can say we need to make some room. And that's what I believe we need to do. We need to use public lands to develop either permanent supportive shelter for people who are now homeless, very low income, or what's called workforce or missing middle housing. When we're working with developers, we need to enforce legal covenants to provide as much low-income and workforce housing as we possibly can. And that has to be built into the agreements that we have with any local developers who we contract with in the county to build on private land.
Hear, hear!
It's a very bad situation. I mean, I'm running around talking to people. I've talked to people in coffee shops. I'm like, where are you living there? Oh, I live in Santa Clara, but sometimes I sleep here in my car because I'm too tired to get back home. There are people sleeping in their cars going to school here, people sleeping in their cars just working here. So the question is, do we want restaurants and ice cream parlors and schools with teachers? Do we want those things? And so I think part of getting legislation passed around that is helping to educate people about the nature of the problem. And I think that I'm someone who's good at doing that. Uh, I have an advisor. His name is Mark Northcross. He's my advisor on housing. He calls himself a practical progressive. I love him. He's wonderful, and he's informing me about housing policy. It's one of the most complex issues I've had to deal with on this. In terms of homelessness, I feel like we really need to listen more closely to the advocates. I know they can be too much. They can often be too much. I know that from serving on the Homeless Advisory Committee. I served on the Homelessness Advisory Committee for 9 months for the city. And but I also know that they're the ones who are in the streets watching people die, you know, and caring and having relationships with people. And that's what informs their passion. And then I also know that there are people, you know, who live in neighborhoods that are finding dead bodies, you know, next to their business. And so we need to come together to provide solutions that are also best practice solutions where people aren't forced to pick up, move their stuff at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then where do they go? So we need to me, that's an issue of deeper dialogue and not the kind of divisions that we're seeing now at council meetings. It's very upsetting to me to see the way that it's sort of become this huge sort of us versus them situation in the city council. I think that might be it.